My wife cheated with her boss and he's now claiming half my $750, $0 inheritance in a bitter divorce. That's almost half our estate, and I just found out she's been lying for months. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Emily, turned out to be the biggest betrayal of my life. You know those moments when everything just shatters in an instant? Yeah, that was me. It all started with little signs, things I brushed off, signs I now realize were glaring red flags. But the real shocker came when I accidentally stumbled onto something that changed everything forever. Emily and I had been married for almost 8 years. We built a pretty comfortable life together. Nice house, good jobs, a couple of kids. I always thought she was loyal, maybe a little vain, but loyal nonetheless. She was the type to throw tantrums if she didn't get her way, always bitching about how she deserved the best, how she worked so hard to keep everything perfect. But she was also the kind of woman who'd lie about small stuff, just enough to keep her secrets hidden. It was a normal Tuesday evening when I decided to check our joint bank account. Nothing unusual, just routine. But then I saw the transaction. A $500 deposit from her boss, Mark. That was weird because she'd never gotten a bonus like that before and she always kept her work money separate. I thought maybe it was a mistake, so I kept digging. That's when I noticed her phone was buzzing constantly, texts, emails, calls. She started disappearing into the bedroom more, locking the door, whispering on the phone. One night I decided to follow her. I knew I was probably overthinking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I waited until she left for her book club, which was her excuse every Thursday night. Instead of going out, she went to a hotel downtown. I parked across the street watching her go into the place. It was late, around midnight, when I saw her come out with Mark. They looked too close. She was laughing, leaning into him, and I saw the way he looked at her. That was the moment I knew she was cheating on me. My stomach dropped. My mind was racing. I had to get proof, so I followed them. I watched them go to a nearby motel and I saw her kiss him in the parking lot. That's when I finally knew for sure. Emily had been lying for months, covering her tracks, pretending everything was fine while she was sneaking around with her boss. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was having sex with her boss. I didn't sleep that night. The betrayal hit hard. I felt angry, hurt, humiliated. I kept thinking about how she lied, how she made me look like the fool. I remembered all the times she'd snapped at me for being paranoid or jealous, all the times she told me I was overreacting. Turns out she was the one hiding something, and the worst part, she'd been lying to me about the affair, about her feelings, about everything. The next morning I confronted her. I didn't even knock. I just barged into the bedroom where she was still in her pajamas, looking guilty but trying to act like she was surprised to see me. I threw the phone on the bed. "Who is Mark, Emily?" I asked, voice trembling with anger. Her face went pale and she tried to deny it, saying it was just work stuff, that I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat. That's when I lost it. I told her I saw her kissing him, saw the texts, the hotel receipts, her reaction. A bitchy smirk, like she thought she was untouchable, like she was better than me. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, that she loved me but that Mark was just a harmless distraction. Yeah, right. That's when the emotional roller coaster really started. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I was furious, then devastated. How could she do this? After all we built, she just threw it away for some quick sex with her boss. I kept thinking about the betrayal, how she lied, how she manipulated me into thinking everything was fine while she was out screwing someone else. I started questioning everything about our marriage, about who she really was. But the thing that gnawed at me most was the money. I mean, this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the fact that she'd been lying to me about her job, about her finances, about her life. And then I found out that Mark was claiming half of my inheritance, almost $375, $0, because of some legal loophole he was trying to exploit. That's when I realized this was about more than just infidelity. It was about revenge, power, and money. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to figure out what to do next. After that first confrontation, everything changed. Emily kept up her act, pretending like nothing had happened, like I was overreacting, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She'd become even bitchier, snapping at me over the smallest things, throwing tantrums if I questioned her about her whereabouts or her phone. I was furious, but mostly hurt. I'd trusted her, loved her, and now I was faced with the reality that she'd been lying to my face for months. I started digging into everything I could about the affair, about Mark, about her finances. It didn't take long to find out that Mark was a slimy guy, always flaunting his money, always looking for the next hot thing. I discovered that she'd been having sex with him in hotel rooms, sometimes multiple times a week. She'd even told her friends she was working late, but now I knew the truth. She was sneaking around with her boss, and that was no coincidence. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep this betrayal went. Emily had always been obsessed with status, with money. She loved to flaunt her designer clothes, her expensive jewelry, her perfect Instagram photos. And now I saw she'd been using her job, her supposed career, as a cover for her affair. She'd lied to me about her work trips, her late nights, everything. Meanwhile, Mark was apparently showering her with gifts, taking her out to fancy dinners, and giving her the kind of attention she'd always craved. I also learned that Mark was a wealthy man. Well, he was claiming part of my inheritance now, saying he deserved half because he was married to Emily in spirit, or some bullshit like that. I couldn't believe he was trying to pull that stunt, especially since he was also married. But that's the thing about these kinds of people. They'll do anything for money or power. I knew I couldn't let Emily or Mark get away with this. I started planning my revenge, not just emotionally but legally, financially. I had a lawyer look into the situation, and I found out that Emily's affair could be grounds for divorce, no problem there. But what I didn't expect was Mark's claim on half my inheritance. That was a game changer. I had to protect what was mine. One night I sat down with my lawyer and laid everything out. I told him about Emily's lies, the affair, the hotel receipts, the texts, everything. We discussed how Mark was trying to claim part of my estate. I was furious. This bastard was trying to steal from me after everything I'd worked for. I decided then that I'd fight him in court, and I'd do everything possible to keep what was left of my inheritance. In the meantime, I started gathering evidence of Emily's infidelity, photos, text messages, witness statements from friends who knew about her late nights with Mark. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case when the time came. I also started thinking about what life would be like after this mess. I'd always been stable, but now I wondered if I could trust anyone again, especially a woman who had lied so blatantly. What made it worse was the fact that Emily was still acting like nothing was wrong. She'd throw fits if I questioned her, call me paranoid or insecure. She'd say I was jealous, that I didn't trust her, but I knew the truth. I knew she'd betrayed me, that she'd been screwing her boss behind my back, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided I'd need to be strategic. I couldn't just confront her again. I had to be smart. I started secretly recording conversations, saving every piece of evidence I could find. I also made a list of everything she'd lied about, her trips, her money, her feelings. I knew this was about revenge as much as it was about justice. I wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal, to see what it was like to be played for a fool. The biggest shock came when I found out that Emily had been planning to leave me, take the kids, and run off with Mark once she got her hands on my inheritance. She'd been talking about starting fresh with him, using my money to do it. That was the moment I realized I couldn't let her destroy everything I'd built. I had to act fast, protect my assets, and make her pay for her lies. So I kept pushing forward, gathering every piece of dirt I could find. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about a woman who'd completely betrayed her vows, lied to her family, and tried to steal my future. And I was going to make sure she paid the price. By the time I had enough evidence, I was livid. Emily still had the nerve to act like everything was normal, like she hadn't thrown my entire world into chaos. She'd come home late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and then act innocent when I confronted her. She'd shrug, say I was overthinking it, or accuse me of being paranoid again. But I wasn't going to buy her bullshit anymore. I knew the truth, and I knew she was lying, so I started planning my next move. One particular night, I decided to set a trap. I installed a hidden camera in the bedroom, pointed at the bed. I knew she'd be sneaking around again, and I wanted visual proof. It was a gamble, but I had to see her with my own eyes. That night she left the house around 8 p.m. saying she was meeting a friend. I watched her leave, heart pounding, and waited until she was gone to check the camera footage. Sure enough, at around 10 p.m. she came back with Mark. They went straight into the bedroom and I saw her kiss him again, her hands all over him. It was real, it was raw, and it was disgusting. Seeing that footage was like a punch to the gut. I felt rage boiling inside me. I had to confront her again, but this time I was ready. I sat her down the next morning, showed her the video, and told her I knew everything. Her face twisted into a sneer and she started lying again. "It's just sex," she spat. "It doesn't mean anything. You're insecure, jealous, and I'm tired of your accusations." She told me I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat, that I was possessive and controlling. But I wasn't having it. I told her I had enough of her lies. I explained I had evidence of her affair, her money, problems, and her intentions to leave me once she got her hands on my inheritance. That's when she really lost her temper. She started yelling, calling me crazy, obsessed, and a terrible husband. She claimed I was ruining her life, that I was holding her hostage, and that I was just jealous of her success. I looked her in the eyes and said, "No, Emily. You're the one who's been lying, cheating, and playing me for a fool, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." That confrontation was a turning point. I saw how deep her narcissism ran. She didn't care about us, about the kids, about the marriage. All she cared about was her own selfish needs, money, status, and her affair with Mark. I realized I'd been a fool to trust her, to think she'd be loyal. But from that moment on, I knew I had to protect myself and my assets. The next step was to consult with a lawyer about how to handle the legal mess. I found out that Mark was trying to claim half of my inheritance, my $750, $0 estate, on some flimsy grounds. My lawyer told me I had a strong case to keep what was mine, but I needed to act fast. I also started gathering financial documents, bank statements, proof of my income, and everything related to the inheritance. I wanted to make sure I could defend myself in court if Mark or Emily tried anything shady. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her act, acting like the victim. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was destroying her life, that I was abusive for confronting her. She called her friends, venting about how controlling I was, how I was jealous and possessive. But I didn't care about her pity party. I knew the truth now, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. I also started planning how to handle the kids. I didn't want to drag them into the mess, but I knew Emily's behavior could affect them. I decided I'd keep everything stable, keep her from manipulating them, and focus on protecting my family's future. I wasn't going to let her ruin everything I'd worked for, not after all the lies, betrayal, and deception. I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a sense of clarity. I'd loved Emily once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd thrown everything away for a piece of her boss's ego. I was determined to fight for my inheritance, for my dignity, and for my peace of mind. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I was done being the fool. From now on, I was going to do whatever it took to get justice and move on with my life. The legal process moved faster than I expected. I had my lawyer draw up all the necessary documents to contest Mark's claim on my inheritance. I also filed for divorce, knowing I couldn't stay married to someone who had lied so blatantly and cheated behind my back. Emily's reaction was predictable. She flipped out, calling me vindictive, paranoid, and an idiot for ruining what we had. She threw tantrums, slammed doors, and tried to guilt me into backing down, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate me any longer. While the legal battle was ongoing, I also decided to take control of my finances. I transferred most of my assets into a separate account, froze some of the joint accounts, and hired a private investigator to look into Emily's financial dealings. I wanted to see if she had any hidden accounts or assets that she might try to hide or claim later. Honestly, I was just sick of feeling like I was being played for a fool, and I was determined to protect what was mine. I also started talking to a few trusted friends, people who knew about Emily's recent behavior. They confirmed what I already suspected, that she'd been acting differently for months. One of her friends even told me Emily had been talking about leaving me, using my money to start a new life with Mark. Hearing that made my blood boil. I realized she had been planning this for a while, probably since the moment she realized I was onto her. Meanwhile, Emily kept trying to spin her story. She'd tell anyone who'd listen that I was abusive, controlling, and jealous, trying to paint herself as the victim. But I knew better. I had the evidence, the proof of her affair, her lies, and her scheming. I felt a strange sense of empowerment, like I was finally taking control after months of feeling helpless and betrayed. One afternoon, I found out that Mark had been subpoenaed to testify in the divorce proceedings. That's when I decided I needed to confront him directly. I tracked him down and arranged a meeting. I wanted to see what kind of man he was, face to face. When we met, I was calm but firm. I told him I knew about the affair, about his attempt to claim part of my inheritance, and that I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I warned him that if he tried to take more than what was legally his, I'd fight him all the way to court. Mark, of course, tried to act confident, acting like he was the victim, that Emily was the one who'd been misled or pressured. But I saw through his bullshit. He looked nervous, like he knew he was in trouble. I made it clear that I had enough evidence to ruin him, and I was prepared to do just that if he kept pushing. I told him to back off, to accept his place, and to stop trying to steal what was rightfully mine. That was the moment. I realized I wasn't going to be bullied or manipulated anymore. I was ready to fight for every dollar, every inch of my dignity. The divorce proceedings dragged on, but I stayed focused. I was determined to get full custody of the kids, protect my assets, and make sure Emily paid for her betrayal. I also kept my distance emotionally. I didn't want to get sucked into her games. Every time she tried to guilt me or twist the story, I just stayed firm. I knew the truth, and I was going to see this through to the end. Throughout all this, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally taking control, anger that she'd lied so much, betrayed everything we'd built. I kept thinking about how she'd been so bitchy, so manipulative, and how she'd used her charm to hide her true intentions. But I also realized I'd been blind for too long, and now I was finally waking up. I started making plans for my future, how I'd rebuild, how I'd protect my kids, and how I'd make sure Mark didn't get a dime more than he deserved. I'd worked too hard for this estate to let some sleazy boss try to steal half of it. I knew I'd have to stay vigilant, keep fighting, and never let her manipulate me again. This was just the beginning, but I was done being the victim. It was time to take back my life. The fight over the inheritance and the divorce was brutal, but I had my footing now. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and preparing for the court battles ahead. Emily's attempts to paint me as the villain only fueled my resolve. She threw everything she had, accusations, tears, screams, but I stayed calm, focused on the facts. I knew her game. She wanted to keep the house, keep the money, and move on with Mark, leaving me in the dust. But I wasn't going to let that happen. One day, I got a call from my lawyer with some good news. The judge had dismissed Mark's claim on the inheritance, at least for now. Apparently, Mark's legal team was trying to argue that he had some sort of marriage-like relationship with Emily, which could entitle him to part of my estate. But my lawyer presented solid evidence that Mark was married, that Emily had been lying about her relationship with him, and that her claims were baseless. The judge saw through it. For now, I kept my $750, $0, and that felt like a huge win. That same day, I sat down with Emily face to face. I told her I was done playing her games, that I was filing for full custody of the kids, and that I was going to get a divorce. Her face twisted in anger, then desperation. She shouted, called me every name in the book. Abusive, jealous, possessive, but I didn't care. I knew the truth. I knew she'd been lying, cheating, scheming. I told her she'd lost everything, her marriage, her family, her credibility, and that I was finally done trusting her. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I hired a new financial advisor to help me manage my assets, especially now that the inheritance was safe. I also started therapy, something I'd avoided for years, to deal with the emotional fallout. It was a lot to process: betrayal, anger, sadness, but also a strange sense of liberation. I finally saw clearly what kind of person Emily really was: selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own gain. One afternoon, I received a letter from Emily's lawyer. She was trying to push the divorce proceedings faster, claiming I was abusing her emotionally and threatening her stability. It was classic Emily, trying to spin her lies into a victim story. But I was done with her manipulations. I responded with a firm letter, stating that I had all the evidence I needed, that I was prepared to fight for full custody, and that I would not be swayed by her false accusations. I knew the truth and I wasn't backing down. Looking back, I realize I've learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile. People can hide their true selves behind a pretty face or a false smile. Emily's betrayal showed me how far some will go for money and status, even if it means destroying a family. It also taught me the importance of standing up for myself, of fighting for what's right, even when it feels overwhelming. I don't regret the fight, I just wish I'd seen her true nature sooner. Now I'm slowly rebuilding. I've moved into a new place, started fresh and focused on my kids. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but I'm stronger for it. I know I'll never let someone manipulate me again. And as for Emily, I hope she finally realizes what she lost, because she threw away a good life for a cheap thrill. All I can say is, if you find yourself in a similar situation, don't be afraid to fight. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and never let someone take more than they deserve. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with the consequences, and you deserve better. The final stretch of this chaos has been a roller coaster I never signed up for, but honestly, I feel like I've come out stronger on the other side. The divorce is finalized now, and I've managed to retain most of my inheritance, despite Mark's ridiculous claim. I've also secured full custody of the kids, which was my top priority. Watching Emily try to manipulate the situation, spin her lies, and act innocent was exhausting, but I kept my focus, kept my evidence tight, and refused to fall into her trap. Looking back, I realize how much I underestimated her. I always thought she was ambitious, maybe a little vain, but I never imagined she'd be capable of such deceit, lying, cheating, scheming just to get her way. It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing someone you loved could turn out to be so selfish and manipulative. But I guess that's the lesson. People aren't always who they seem. Be cautious, trust your instincts, and never ignore the small signs. The betrayal cut deep, but it also taught me resilience. I learned that I'm capable of fighting for what's mine: my dignity, my family, my future. The legal battles, the emotional toll, the sleepless nights, they all made me realize how important it is to stand firm when someone tries to take advantage of you. I won't let anyone, especially someone I once trusted, destroy what I've worked hard for. Now I'm finally moving forward. I've started a new job, focusing on my career and providing stability for my kids. We're rebuilding, one day at a time. The pain of her betrayal will always be there, but it no longer controls me. I've found peace in knowing I did everything I could to protect myself and my family. If there's one thing I want to share with anyone reading this, it's this: don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Don't let someone's lies or manipulations go unchallenged. Gather your evidence, seek legal help if needed, and don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. It's a tough lesson, but ultimately it's worth it. You deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. Things money can't buy, but integrity can protect. And as for Emily, I hope she finally understands the cost of her actions. I hope she realizes that no amount of money or superficial success is worth losing her integrity and her family. For me, it's about moving on, learning from the past, and making sure I never let someone's betrayal define my future. Because in the end, the only person who truly matters is the one looking back at me in the mirror, someone who's been broken, but who's also stronger now than ever before.